Welcome to JK Tells a Story, where real-life dramas unfold. Sit back and enjoy today's tale. I steered the small inflatable boat toward the shore as I looked back at the Sea Hunter. The beautiful pink, purple, and orange colors of the sunset painted the sky above South Beach. The white sand and dark rocks contrasted sharply along the Miami coastline. There was no one on this secluded stretch of beach, and I was grateful for that solitude. I wasn't expecting anyone. After all, it was Thursday, which only made my mission easier. As the sun set, darkness would cover my landing, and there would be nothing to worry about. I have bittersweet memories of this beautiful coastline. Like tomorrow's sunrise, life will begin anew, and I regret nothing. Many months before, we could have been featured on one of those HGTV reality shows where a couple decides to move to a tropical paradise and goes through the process of evaluating several places to live. At the end of the show, they share a fruity drink with the real estate agent, celebrating the purchase of their new home. In our case, we were running, not from the snows of the Midwest, but from 9 months of gray skies and bitter cold in Chicago. Kate and I met in Chicago and have been married for 6 years. We were vacationing in Miami and decided the South Beach area was the right place for us to start over. Chicago's harsh winters were important, but not the only reason for the move. We were choosing between a house and a condo, and both options had pros and cons. In the end, we settled on a condominium. The lack of maintenance and the ability to make friends faster were the main reasons we chose the condo. Ocean Drive is a waterfront road that runs along South Beach, lined with Art Deco buildings, luxury condos, and palm trees. Every morning, runners, walkers, and cyclists traverse it, getting their daily dose of exercise and vitamin D. The condo we chose, the Meridian, was about a mile south of the main strip and was one of the larger complexes. It had a beautiful infinity pool overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, a covered outdoor seating area with barbecue facilities, and a well-equipped fitness center with machines and free weights in an air-conditioned space. Our Unit 812 was on the 8th floor of the oceanfront building, directly facing the Atlantic. It had 3 bedrooms, a beautiful master bedroom with ocean views, a decent-sized guest room, and a smaller bedroom facing west toward downtown Miami. This would be my home office. The realtor said that 3-bedroom condos with direct ocean views are rare in this price range, and we should act quickly. She may have exaggerated the urgency, but we offered full price and got it. "Oh, Marcus, I'm so excited," Kate said as we closed on the condo purchase. "I feel like our life is going to turn into a permanent vacation. Marcus, I love you. This was the right move for us." "I'm glad you like it, and I do too, but as for a permanent vacation, I still have more than a full-time workload, and you'll have your teaching when school starts again. We still have to maintain this new lifestyle," I replied. "I know," Kate said, "but let me just dream about vacation mode for now." I smiled at her and gave her a hug. This really was my dream, and I was glad Kate was happy here too. We were actually in pretty good financial shape. The house I sold in Naperville allowed us to easily cover the mortgage and monthly expenses. After the purchase, we had a good amount of capital left, and there was also my secret investment account, which Kate didn't know about. Kate is an elementary school teacher, and because of her experience, she easily found a position at Coral Gables Elementary starting in the fall. Since we moved in May, she had the entire summer to settle in and explore our new home. I am an insurance claims investigator. I can work from anywhere. I worked in an office in downtown Chicago for the first 10 years, but the knowledge I gained from the veterans in that office allows me to work remotely now. By the time we got the keys and moved in, we had been in Miami for about 2 weeks and were adjusting to the new way of life. I had to coordinate with insurance companies across different time zones and maintain relationships with clients nationwide. I was usually up at 5 a.m. and working in my office by 6 o'clock. Kate was enjoying her summer freedom, sleeping in, reading by the pool, exploring the city, and completely decompressing from a demanding school year. I knew her job was challenging and stressful. When I could, I would finish early in the afternoons, and we would start our evenings together exploring Miami. We moved in on a Wednesday in mid-May, and in the process met several new neighbors. Everyone seemed friendly, and the residents were diverse. Older, younger, singles, couples, and different ethnicities. We learned that the condo was hosting a social evening this Friday. Everyone would gather in the pool area around 6 p.m. There was food, sometimes music, and everything was optional. Apparently, it happened a couple of times a month with different events or themes. Everything was coordinated through the building's community manager. We arrived at the gathering around 6 p.m. with a chilled bottle of white wine and a cooler of beer. We found a free table and settled in. We met a lot of people, and everyone seemed nice with varying levels of friendliness. There were definitely some larger-than-life personalities. One of the first couples we met were Robert and David, a married couple who had moved from Boston. They live at the Meridian full-time. Robert is a large, distinguished black man who taught economics at Boston University before retiring. David was a financial advisor who retired in his early 50s. I got the impression that money wasn't a concern for them. Then we met Frank and Linda Rodriguez. The Rodriguezes were in their 50s, originally from Texas, and had lived here for about a year. Frank was a contractor who made his money in commercial construction around Houston. Both were good-natured and seemed to enjoy their cocktails. I like everything about Miami, but I still can't get used to the bright tropical shirts everyone wears here. Another interesting couple was Trevor Blackwell and Victoria Sterling. They're married, we learned. Victoria works as a senior vice president at a major investment bank and splits her time between Miami and New York. Trevor has a psychology background but also considers himself a real estate developer and investment consultant. Victoria seems to shuttle back and forth between Miami and New York frequently. Trevor said that, for now, he's working from the Meridian full-time. I have a project I'm developing locally, actually on the west side of Miami-Dade County. We could drive out there sometime and take a look if you'd like, Trevor explained. Trevor looked about 5 or 6 years older than me. He was probably in his late 30s or early 40s. Victoria looked slightly older. She was slim and attractive with a serious expression, blonde with fair skin. She looked successful, which, as we later found out, she was. Trevor was darker, probably of Mediterranean descent. He was a few inches taller than me, about 6 feet 2 inches, well-tanned and in excellent shape. He had a casual, slightly roguish look, but so far he seemed like a decent guy. I met many other people at the social evening, but I had the longest conversation with Trevor. He told me that he counseled people informally. He called himself a relationship specialist, whatever that meant. He was interesting and had a certain charisma. He asked about my work and how we had chosen Miami as a place to live. While we were talking, I realized Kate hadn't been at our table in a while and casually glanced around to see where she was. She was talking to a young, lean guy with a deep tan and curly brown hair. He looked to be in his mid-20s. They were laughing and standing pretty close together. Trevor noticed me watching them. "That's Jake Morrison," he told me. "He's a resident ladies' man," Trevor explained with a smirk. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Yeah, a good-looking young guy like that tends to attract attention from female tourists and residents alike," Trevor continued. I started to get up to go over there, but I did a quick calming exercise: deep inhale, deep exhale, deep inhale, deep exhale. I looked back at Trevor, and he had this analytical expression on his face, like he was mentally studying the situation. "Hi, Kate," I announced, wrapping my arms around her waist and kissing her cheek. "Oh, Marcus." I think I surprised her, and it took her a moment to collect herself. "This is Jake. He's a marine biologist. He's been telling me about the marine life off Miami Beach." "Marcus Thompson," I said, extending my hand. "Nice to meet you," Jake replied. He grabbed my hand, and I squeezed it perhaps a bit too firmly. His expression changed from friendly to questioning. Kate went on about what an interesting person he was and how he had suggested we go out on his boat to see dolphins and manatees. I just stood there with a polite smile and nodded. See you around, I said and directed Kate back to our table. When I looked back, Jake gave me a puzzled look. We returned to our table, and Kate started talking with Victoria and Linda Rodriguez. I just observed the social dynamics, my attention occasionally drifting back to Jake. Don't worry, he never pursues married women. I heard a deep, resonant voice say. It was Robert. Excuse me? I asked. I saw you watching young Mr. Morrison, Robert said with a pleasant smile. He's a nice young man, and he's not unpleasant to look at either, but I wouldn't worry about him when it comes to married women. I'm not worried about any of that, I said, slightly embarrassed that Robert had noticed my concern. Same thing, my friend. Rest assured, Jake is a young, red-blooded heterosexual, but he has his own code of ethics. Married women are definitely off-limits to him. He and I have had many discussions about relationships and boundaries. Thank you for the information, but I assure you it doesn't bother me, I replied. Good. All healthy relationships are built on trust, Mr. Thompson, Robert said and departed, giving me a friendly pat on the shoulder. Sitting at the table, I thought about Robert's words. It was almost exactly a year ago when we were invited to a party by one of Kate's colleagues when we lived in Naperville, just outside of Chicago. These parties could be fun, but sometimes they devolved into school gossip and complaints about administration, which could get boring for an outsider like me. Kate was excited and looked great. She's about 30 years old, 3 years younger than me. She has thick, dark blonde shoulder-length hair and an elegant figure. I think it was her open smile and beautiful eyes that initially caught my attention. Truth be told, when I first saw her, I was primarily interested in pursuing her, but then I got to know her better. That story would have to wait, but it can't be helped. She really does have a natural magnetism. I'm used to her attracting male attention, and sometimes female attention too. I'm just trying to stay calm. Deep breaths, deep breaths. Anyway, we arrived at the party at the home of one of her friends and colleagues. It was the usual crowd. I knew about a third of the group by name and another third I'd seen at similar events before. When we walked in, I spotted an old high school teammate, Tommy Fletcher. He's hard to miss. Tommy is huge and seems to have gotten even bigger since high school. We played football together at Naperville Central High School. I was a running back and Tommy played offensive line. We weren't close friends in high school, but we were teammates, and I was glad to see him. We ended up having a beer and catching up. It turned out his wife, Jennifer, works as a school counselor in the same district where Kate teaches. Tommy and I, along with a few other people, sat in one corner talking about sports, work, and the usual topics. About an hour and a half into the party, the energy shifted. A couple of guys from the group I was with looked toward the door, and conversation seemed to pause for a moment. Then there were some enthusiastic greetings. I looked around and saw a tall, dark-haired man walk into the party. I'm straight, of course, but I have to admit the guy was good-looking. As I watched him walk in, I glanced across the room at Kate. She looked at the guy, and then I saw her friend Sarah and another colleague looking at Kate. Sarah whispered something, and then they all smiled knowingly. What was that about? My antenna was up, but I was trying to act casual. A few of the guys I was chatting with started talking about him, and I learned his name was Dr. Alexander Hayes. It turned out he'd been working in Boston for the last 4 or 5 years and was now back in the Chicago area as a consulting child psychologist for several school districts. He specialized in trauma counseling for children. I looked over and saw Kate hugging him warmly. When she started to look in my direction, I quickly rejoined the discussion my group was having. I wanted to keep discreetly watching to see what would happen. I admit I can get jealous, but I try to apply my calming techniques to stay composed. Throughout the evening, Dr. Hayes and Kate rarely took a step away from each other. At one point, I noticed they had separated themselves from the others and were seated in a quiet corner. Now, I could remain calm to a point, but at this stage, I excused myself and walked over to them, putting my arm around Kate's shoulders. I looked up at him and introduced myself. Marcus Thompson, I said, shaking Hayes's hand. Alex Hayes, he replied with a charismatic smile. Alex, this is my husband Marcus, Kate said. You're married? He said with a slightly shocked expression. Kate doesn't usually wear her wedding ring because it can interfere with her work with children during playground activities and art projects. Yes, didn't I mention that? Kate asked, looking alternately at me and Alex. Hayes quickly recovered and said, Oh, maybe you did. Anyway, Marcus, you have a beautiful wife. Congratulations to you both. Now, I don't want to monopolize anyone's time. There are others I should catch up with. With a quick kiss on Kate's cheek and a squeeze on my shoulder, he withdrew. An awkward silence hung between Kate and me. So you know this guy? I asked. Kate looked at me with a hint of guilt on her face. Yes, he worked as a consultant for our district when I was a new teacher, before we were married. And, pressed. He was part of a young professional group of educators and child specialists that sometimes socialized together, she said, some awkwardness in her voice. Well, you definitely spent a lot of time with him tonight. Did you two ever go out? I asked. No, not really. We were just friends in a professional group. Now let's just forget about it, she said. I know I don't have everything figured out, but I do get jealous. I admit it, but sometimes she gives me reason to be concerned. She's never crossed any lines, but she can be flirtatious, and I know she had a somewhat adventurous past. I didn't know all the details, but I'd heard hints. About 3 weeks after the party, I got an unexpected call from my old teammate Tommy Fletcher. Tommy's office wasn't far from mine in downtown Chicago, and he asked me to meet him for a drink at one of the downtown bars after work. Sure, Tommy, my pleasure, I said. That was a little unusual. I liked Tommy, but we'd never been particularly close friends. When I asked him what was up, he just said we'd talk that evening. I met Tommy at Murphy's Pub, an upscale bar near the financial district. We ordered beers, and I asked what was going on. Marcus, it's none of my business, but you're my friend, and I feel I have a duty to let you know what's happening, he said. Should I be concerned? I was confused. What's going on? I was starting to feel anxious. Calm down and let me explain, Tommy replied. Deep breath, deep breath. Jennifer works with your wife in the school district, right? Remember that guy all the women were looking at Sarah's party a few weeks ago? He asked. Who? I asked, though I thought I already knew. You know, the charming doctor type who made a fashionably late entrance, he explained. Yeah, I know who you mean. Alex, what about him? I didn't like where this was going, and I was starting to feel angry. Tommy could sense it. Calm down, Marcus. Let me get to the point, Tommy continued calmly. Jennifer said this guy is working as a consultant at several schools in the district now. Your wife has had lunch with him several times, just the two of them. Jennifer says they always sit alone in the faculty lounge, away from everyone else. So far, that doesn't sound too concerning, I said, though it was. She says they look too comfortable together, and this guy has a reputation. What kind of reputation? I asked, though I had a pretty good idea. I know his type. Tall, handsome, charming, the kind of guy who usually gets whatever woman he wants. Jennifer also said she heard they had some sort of history back in the day. What kind of history? I asked. Jennifer didn't know the details. That's all she heard, Tommy said. Kate and I had talked about old relationships before, but I had never heard of Dr. Alex until that party. He's a player, Tommy said. Jennifer stays away from him. Did something happen that Jennifer witnessed? I asked. Jennifer didn't think so, but on Thursday this week, a group of them are going out after work. Your wife tried to get Jennifer to come, but she declined. When Jennifer tried to say something to your wife about Mr. Smooth Operator, your wife just laughed and said he was harmless. Look, you're my friend and teammate, and I'm only passing along what Jennifer told me. But if it were me, I'd definitely make sure all this friendly business stopped, Tommy said firmly. He finished his drink, and I told him the beer was on me and that I needed to sit for a few minutes. We said goodbye and he wished me luck. My initial reaction was to go home and confront her, but what would I say? That I'd heard she'd had lunch with an old colleague a few times? She would accuse me of jealousy and immaturity. Plan B was to see what happened Thursday night. For a couple of days, I kept a low profile and pretended nothing had happened. On Wednesday after work, she told me about Thursday evening plans. According to Kate, a group of teachers were going out for drinks and possibly dinner. She said I would be dining alone that night. I had a plan. I purposely didn't ask where they were going. Interestingly, she didn't offer that information either. Later that evening, I texted Tommy and asked him to have Jennifer find out where the group would be meeting after work, and that Jennifer should not inform Kate of my request. He agreed and said he would text me the location the next day. Thursday afternoon, I received a text from Tommy, Belmont's Bistro at 6 p.m. I sent back, thanks. During the day on Thursday, I had no calls or texts from Kate. After work, I went to my gym and worked out. I left the gym around 7 o'clock and arrived at Belmont's at 7:30. I ordered takeout. Their food is actually quite good. The place looked busy, and I saw Kate's car in the parking lot. I walked in and told the hostess I had a pickup order. I was told to pay at the bar and that everything was almost ready. I noticed a group at a large table near the bar. As I slowly approached, I saw several teachers I recognized, and in one corner sat Kate and Dr. Hayes. I couldn't tell if he was leaning close to her or resting his arm on the back of her chair, but either way, he was clearly marking his territory. They seemed to be having a private conversation, separate from the rest of the group. I walked over with feigned surprise. "Kate!" I exclaimed, and our eyes met. "Marcus!" she almost shouted. "What are you doing here?" Several things happened at once. She pulled slightly away from the doctor with a guilty look. He seemed annoyed that I had interrupted but quickly put on a friendly, innocent expression. He extended his hand for a handshake, but I ignored it. A few of the other teachers seemed amused by the situation. "Just picking up dinner," I said. "Have a good time." At that point, I collected my food and left. As I drove away, I saw the restaurant door open. Kate had seen me leave. By the time I got home, I was quite hungry. While I ate, I turned on ESPN and had a beer. I wondered how long it would take Kate to get home. If everything was innocent, she would continue her evening and get home at a reasonable hour. If, on the other hand, she felt guilty, she might come home fairly quickly. My wait wasn't long. She came in trying to act as if nothing had happened, but she kept watching me to gauge my mood. "Wow, you surprised me at Belmont's," she said. "Why didn't you stay and say hello to everyone? You looked like you were having a good time, and I didn't want to intrude," I said with feigned innocence. "Well, you could have at least said hello to the others," she replied. "Ha, the others," I said. "I only noticed your old colleague friend." I think by this point she knew I was somewhat angry but was going to try to make it my problem. Here we go with the jealousy thing again. Alex is a professional colleague I haven't seen in a while, and we were just catching up. Why do you always think every guy is trying to get something from me? Other than at that party, I haven't seen him in years, and we were good friends when we were both working in education. "Oh, I see," I said. "Other than at the party, you haven't had a chance to socialize with him at work, so that's what tonight was about?" "Exactly," she said. "So there's no opportunity to catch up at school?" I asked. "Marcus, no. I'm busy at work," she stated, her voice getting slightly louder. "Okay, so that means no having lunch together. Just the two of you, in the corner of the faculty lounge several times in the last 3 weeks? So, just so I understand clearly, you haven't spent any one-on-one time with the guy they call the district heartthrob?" I asked with feigned innocence. "Well, maybe," she said quietly. "Forget it, Kate. You lied to me. You know it, and I know it," I told her quietly but firmly. "What do you have to say for yourself?" She turned away, and that's when the tears started. She knows this is my weakness, and I could feel her wanting me to hug her and tell her everything would be okay. But not this time. Kate is somewhat flirtatious, but up to that point, she had never lied to me. This created a crack in my trust in her. When I asked her to explain again, she ran upstairs crying. I realized she expected me to follow and comfort her, but it didn't happen. When I went upstairs later, I saw she was in the guest bedroom. With my job, I'm up and out of the house early, long before she gets up. At work, I tried to stay focused, but I made a decision. With or without Kate, I would leave the dreary weather of Illinois and move to Florida. Several people from my company had relocated and were working remotely. One of my good friends, Rick, who started around the same time I did, lives in the Tampa area and loves it. He constantly asks me why I still go to an office when there are no advantages to being in Chicago. I have always loved beaches and warm weather. Florida has been our favorite vacation destination, and I had decided Miami was my preferred area. Although Kate liked Florida too, she wasn't enthusiastic about moving. That was concerning. After lunch, I researched real estate in the Miami area. I usually get home before Kate, but when I arrived home Friday evening, she was already there. This is going to be interesting, I thought. "Hey, honey," she called out as I walked in. "I've got salmon on the grill. Do you want a beer?" I walked into the kitchen, and she was acting like Thursday never happened. I took the beer from her but didn't kiss her. I took the day off. The house needed cleaning, and I wanted to cook dinner at home tonight. "Sound good?" she asked. I sat down and looked at her. "What?" she asked. "I'm still waiting for an explanation after you lied to me yesterday." I stated, "Oh, Marcus, I wasn't lying. I was just confused. I knew you were upset, and I didn't want to make you more angry." She tried to dismiss it. "Now, do you want teriyaki sauce or lemon pepper on the salmon?" "I don't care about the salmon. I want to know why you lied to me," I said. I rarely raise my voice or use strong language, so she knew I was serious. "What's the big deal?" she protested. "Alex was at the restaurant and we were talking. I'm allowed to have friends, or are you too insecure for that?" She went on the offensive. I was getting really angry. My inner voice was whispering calming techniques. Deep breaths, deep breaths. "Here are the facts," I said. "You spent over an hour one-on-one with this guy at Sarah's party, and he didn't even know we were married. The subject never came up during your entire conversation. Fact 2. You regularly have lunch with him, just the two of you in the faculty lounge, and it's causing workplace gossip. Fact 3. You were socializing with him at Belmont's, separate from the rest of the group. And finally, fact 4, you lied to me about seeing him. By my calculation, you've had at least 6 hours of one-on-one time with him. So what's the big deal?" She just sat there, looking down. Mentally, I prepared myself for the possibility that my marriage might be ending and began thinking about a fresh start in Miami. I truly loved Kate and enjoyed everything we did together, but I wouldn't tolerate deception. I knew I was jealous, and if I didn't get the truth from her, it would be over. She continued to remain silent, and finally said, "I'm sorry. I've been unfair to you, but can I explain?" I sat and waited. "As you know, my father left when I was 10 years old. I've always needed male approval. I know you know that. In high school, I always chose the bad boy athletes. I had a certain reputation when I graduated from college. I knew some of this, but not all of it. When I got my first teaching job after college, there were a lot of young professionals in the district, and we formed a social group. Sarah and some of the other teachers were in it, including some of the male staff members and consultants like Alex. I dated a few, but nothing serious. It seemed like they all just wanted, well, you know. I wasn't sure I wanted to hear all these details. All the women were attracted to Alex, and he was a bit of a player, I guess. I was interested in him too. I started dating one of his friends, Dr. Neil Carter, another educational consultant. I soon realized it wasn't going anywhere, but we continued seeing each other for a few more months. I also learned that Neil and Alex were roommates and close friends. One night we were at a party, Neil and I, and Alex was there too. I wasn't sure whose house it was. There was a lot of drinking, and Neil and I ended up in one of the bedrooms upstairs. I had quite a few drinks too. This was definitely more information than I needed, but I had to hear how it ended. We were together in someone's room, and afterward we were just lying there when Alex came into the room. He said it was by mistake. He must have had a lot to drink too. He sat down on the bed and started talking to us. Neil said he had to use the bathroom and would be right back. I expected Alex to leave, but he didn't. Well, I sort of had feelings for Alex, and he started making suggestions. "Stop!" I yelled. "Are you telling me you were involved with him too?" For a full minute, she didn't say a word. Finally, sort of. At this point, she was crying and I was furious. My wife had been involved in, I didn't know what to call it, and I didn't know what to do. I guess the silver lining, if you could call it that, was that at least I was getting the truth. No one would make this up. She then told me she felt terrible the next morning. When Neil suggested they try to continue their relationship, she ended it immediately. She learned from others that she was starting to get a reputation among the professional circle. She stopped socializing with that crowd and focused on her career and the rest of her life. "Shortly after that, I met you," she said. "So you were involved with his friend," I stated. "I know I was foolish, but I had feelings for Alex," she said tearfully. "So you're still in love with him? Is that what this is about?" I asked. No, I love you." I was confused. Suddenly this person I was once interested in was showing interest in me. I would never act on it. It was just flattering. I told her I needed to think about it. We never had dinner, and I went out for a walk that lasted for hours. It was starting to rain. A month ago I was happy. Things were going well. I had a beautiful woman as my wife, and I didn't worry about anything. Now I was questioning my wife's judgment, and I wasn't sure I trusted her. One thing was certain. I would definitely be leaving the Midwest for Florida, with or without Kate. Then again, I knew she had been somewhat wild before we got married, but being involved with a guy and his roommate, that was pretty extreme. On the other hand, we weren't married and didn't even know each other at the time. I'd had some casual encounters before we were married too. When I finally made it home, I was conflicted about several things. One thing I was sure of, I was moving to Florida. The next few days were quite stressful. I was still trying to figure out what to do about Kate. I believed she hadn't done anything inappropriate with Alex, but I believed she was getting too close to him. At one point on Saturday afternoon, I was ready to divorce her and move to Miami for a fresh start. On the other hand, I thought back to all the wonderful vacations Kate and I had taken to Florida. The thought of being there without her wasn't nearly as appealing as being there with her. I would have to decide what to do. Apparently, we stayed together and made the move. Kate swore her love for me and denied any current attraction to Alex. I wanted to believe her, and mostly I did. I decided I needed to keep an eye on the situation. That conversation marked the beginning of our move to Miami. By early May, we had sold our house, made the purchase, and relocated. Kate was excited about the change and seemed genuinely committed to making our fresh start work. Our life on Ocean Drive was wonderful during those first weeks of summer. Kate had the entire summer off and was completely relaxed for the first time in years. I had my flexible schedule, working from home with occasional busy periods when major claims came in. There were plenty of times when I could take breaks when Kate wasn't working. My workload fluctuated. It really was like a permanent vacation much of the time. I ran on Ocean Drive almost daily, and when Kate was free, we explored together. We found beautiful parks, the Everglades, stunning views, and amazing beaches. One of the features of the Miami area is the variety of accessible beaches. The good beaches could be reached by car, and they were worth it. Two of our favorite beaches were Key Biscayne and Crandon Park. But one particular beach we loved was Matheson Hammock Beach. In early July, we decided to explore Matheson Hammock Beach on a Thursday. We had not been there yet. Following directions from our guidebook, we turned onto the road leading to this beach. There was a gate with a sign that read, "Closed Thursdays for maintenance." From where we stopped, we could see the water, and it seemed like it was only about half a mile away. We decided to walk along the coral path to check it out. It was definitely worth it. Matheson Hammock Beach is beautiful, fine white sand and turquoise water. It was spectacular. We walked up and down the beach and realized we were completely alone. Probably because everyone knew the road was closed on Thursdays. We found a spot to sit in the sun and enjoy the beach. After a while, I wanted to cool off, so I went for a swim. When I came back, Kate suggested we take advantage of our privacy. She laughed and said, "Since there's no one else around, why not?" I can't believe we made love on the beach. We stayed at Matheson Hammock for a few more hours and then headed back to the car. After we got home, Kate went to shower. What a wonderful day. I felt I had made the right choice in moving to Miami and the right choice in staying with Kate. The next morning, as I was leaving the fitness center, I noticed Trevor on the lawn, slowly and carefully performing martial arts movements. He was wearing only shorts, no shoes, and no shirt. The guy was in excellent shape, his skin a golden bronze color. I remembered he had a refined look, not like me, who was a bit more stocky and muscular. As I was leaving, he called out to me, "Marcus, how are you doing?" We started talking and ended up making plans for Friday evening. No community social this week. We decided to grab poke at a local spot and then stop for drinks at a beachfront bar. Trevor told me about his development project near Homestead, on the west side of Miami-Dade. He has development plans for land he purchased. He also talked about his counseling practice. He said his mission is to help couples build more fulfilling relationships. He said his clients usually don't pay and that he gets referrals through word of mouth. My goal is to help people explore all that life has to offer, not to be limited by other people's ideas and conventions, he proclaimed. If you and Kate would like to schedule a session, we could discuss these concepts in more detail, he continued with genuine charm. I'll think about it, I said. I really wasn't sure what he was talking about. As soon as we got home, Kate told me about her conversation with Victoria. She seems like a smart woman, but she lets slip a couple of times that it's her money that pays for most of their lifestyle. Interesting. So far, in my opinion, Trevor has been a nice guy, a bit of a charmer, but at this point, I don't see anything concerning about him. A few weeks later, Trevor stopped by our apartment to show us a real estate prospectus. I told him I wasn't interested. He looked disappointed but quickly returned to his confident demeanor, as if my answer didn't affect him. It was now mid-July, and Kate had been thoroughly enjoying her summer break. She spent her days reading, going to the beach, working on art projects, and generally relaxing after a demanding school year. That evening, she seemed refreshed and energetic. Trevor was attentive and funny, which cheered her up even more. He inquired about her summer schedule, and she told him that she had the entire summer free to relax. Most days, Marcus and I go to the beach where I can bask in the sun, swim in the ocean, and completely unwind from the school year, she explained. As so far, I had been able to join her on most beach days during the summer. What are your favorite beaches? Trevor asked. Key Biscayne and Crandon Park are our usual spots, Kate replied. Then she looked at me and smiled. We had visited Matheson Hammock several times since our first trip there. We ended up inviting Trevor to join us at Key Biscayne the next day. I wanted Kate to get to know Trevor as much as I did. He seemed like he could become a good friend, and I imagined he and Victoria could become couple friends with us. Kate looked gorgeous in her bikini, and a couple of times I caught Trevor glancing at her. I couldn't blame him, but a small flame of jealousy flared briefly. At one point, I got overheated and went for a swim. Both Kate and Trevor declined to join me, no big deal. When I returned from my swim, I saw them laughing and talking about something. But when I approached the blanket, they stopped their conversation. What were you two discussing? I asked. Oh, nothing important, Kate said quickly. On the way home, Trevor asked us if we had been scuba diving. Neither of us had, but we were both interested. Trevor told us about a dive center in Miami Beach where we could take lessons and get certified. We were intrigued. Kate was especially interested. The longer we lived in Miami, the happier I became, and I wanted Kate to love the lifestyle as much as I did. I was glad we could start a new hobby together. Trevor mentioned he had a boat and that he knew a special location with an amazing reef and always interesting marine life. We agreed to go on a boat trip with him in a few weeks. When we got back to our apartment after Trevor left, we discussed the day. You're right, he's a really nice guy. I enjoyed our day today, Kate said. I was glad she felt that way. If he and Victoria were going to be our friends, I wanted us all to get along. Hey, what were you two laughing about when I went swimming? I asked her. She looked at me, trying to remember what I was referring to, and then quickly looked away as a hint of a smile crossed her lips. Oh, nothing. Trevor was just telling a joke, she said, and I thought she blushed slightly. What kind of joke? I asked, perhaps too seriously. Nothing. Just don't be so controlling, she said, and that was the end of it. We signed up for scuba diving lessons. The first step was to complete the course online, which we did on Saturday. We met at one of the large hotel pools to practice with the equipment. The final step was 4 open water dives to get certified. Trevor told us he was an instructor and suggested we could practice on the day we planned to go boating with him. Seemed like a good idea. We met at the Miami Beach Marina and headed out to sea. We went past the airport runway by about a mile. The water here was blue and calm. We put on our snorkeling gear, and Trevor reviewed the safety procedures the instructor had shown us at the hotel pool. He also told us the water here wasn't very deep, and we would go down for just a few minutes to make sure everything was comfortable. We put on shorty wetsuits and diving gear. What about sharks? Kate asked. There are occasional small reef sharks. I've only seen one once. The big ones, like bull sharks, are typically not in this area, Trevor explained. We descended the ladder and cautiously began exploring the underwater world. It was beautiful. I had no trouble breathing. This is really cool, I thought. I began to descend deeper and felt pressure building in my sinuses. I tried to ignore it, but the deeper I went, the more uncomfortable it became. I had to surface. Even at the surface, the discomfort wouldn't subside. I had to get out of the water. I sat on the boat without any gear and gradually started to feel better. My discomfort seemed to ease after a few minutes. Trevor and Kate surfaced and asked what was wrong. I explained my situation. Kate started to climb up the ladder to check on me, but I told them to continue diving. I was going to be fine. After a brief conversation with me confirming I was okay, they continued their dive. After about half an hour, they surfaced. Kate was so excited and seemed to be having a wonderful time. I really hoped my discomfort wouldn't prevent me from participating in future dives. As a thank you, we invited Trevor over for dinner. We had developed a very friendly relationship over the past few weeks. When we moved to Miami, I wanted to make good friends and have a social life. We seemed to be moving in the right direction. Every now and then, the fact that Kate was comfortable with Trevor caused brief flashes of jealousy, but I knew that was my issue and tried to suppress those feelings. By late July, Friday night community socials at the Meridian had become routine. We found ourselves at a large table with Robert and David, the Rodriguez family, and Trevor. Is Victoria coming? I asked Trevor. No, unfortunately she's in New York for the next few weeks, probably on business for the investment bank. He replied. I had to admit he didn't seem the least bit bothered that his wife was away. We were all talking, socializing, eating, and drinking. At one point, I saw Kate talking to young Jake Morrison. I waited a few minutes and then joined them. They were discussing scuba diving. She told him about my difficulties, and he acknowledged it was a real problem that some people experience with pressure changes. At that moment, a gorgeous blonde woman approached us. Jake introduced her. This is my older sister, Sam. She doesn't live at the Meridian full-time but stays in our family condo when she's in Miami. She was blonde, slender, and beautiful, like a walking model. We learned she was an independent IT consultant and also had an apartment in Silicon Valley. I love Miami and try to come here as often as possible, she said. During our brief conversation, I found out she was divorced. I started to reconsider my first impression of Jake. He seemed like a pretty solid guy. Trevor appeared at that moment, and the mood immediately changed. Sam, who had been talking and laughing just a moment before, became quiet and withdrawn. Jake had an expression like he wanted to confront Trevor. Trevor was as charming as ever, oblivious to the negative reaction. What was going on here? Sam excused herself, and Jake left without saying another word. It was strange. We started talking about scuba diving, and Kate told Trevor how much she had enjoyed it. Trevor discussed different techniques and seemed to have extensive knowledge in this area. "Oh, Marcus, I hope we can figure out what's causing your discomfort. I wouldn't want you to miss out. It's so much fun," Kate added. "Well, since I can't participate safely, you certainly can continue," I said. "That's right, and I'd be happy to be your guide," Trevor added. I hoped he was just being a good friend. Work ebbs and flows, then suddenly becomes intense. I spend my days in our home office analyzing insurance claims and talking to people on the phone. One of the keys to my success is the ability to investigate thoroughly. A weather event such as a hurricane, tornado, or flood can quickly generate significant claims, and a few percentage points difference in settlement amounts can mean big money for the company. One of my high school friends, Kevin Nash, is a meteorologist. To put it bluntly, Kevin is very analytical and brilliant, but socially awkward. He has access to long-range weather forecasts that might be helpful for my work, especially with the approaching hurricane season. Kevin still lives with his parents in a suburb outside Chicago and doesn't like using the phone. You have to meet him in person. Like I said, he's unusual. There would be an insurance industry conference in Chicago in early August where that kind of information might be valuable. My plan was to attend the 2-day conference and then visit Kevin's family to talk with Kevin. A 3-day trip, maybe Kate would like to spend some time back in Chicago during summer break. I called my supervisor at the regional office and told him my plans. "Marcus, I think this is a great idea. It will fit well with our mentoring program that starts next Monday," my supervisor said. I had completely forgotten about that commitment. When I told them I was relocating, my company had an established policy about mentoring new employees. I had been mentored when I started, and it was helpful. Remote employees were assigned a trainee who worked with them for 1 week intensively and continued to assist them after the week of one-on-one work. I agreed as I had no choice. It would be almost 2 weeks total, but we both had friends and family to catch up with. That evening when Kate got home from a day at the beach, I told her about the Chicago trip. 12 days? Marcus, I can't do that, Kate exclaimed. "Why not?" I asked. "That would mean cutting short my summer break, and I have so many things planned. Plus, I've been looking forward to this time off all year," she said. "I've already committed to helping with the summer reading program at the library." "I understand. I didn't want to be away from you this long, but it's important for my career," I replied. The following week, I made an appointment with an ear, nose, and throat specialist about my scuba diving problem. The doctor, Dr. Patel, asked about my symptoms and examined my nose, throat, and ears. He paid particular attention to my left ear. "Mr. Thompson, you seem to have a problem with the eardrum in your left ear. I would strongly discourage you from engaging in underwater activities at depths greater than 10 feet. Snorkeling would probably be fine, but scuba diving could permanently damage your hearing," he said. Great. Now I had gotten Kate interested in scuba diving, and I couldn't participate. On Wednesday, Trevor and I went for a run along Ocean Drive. We discussed work and life. It didn't seem like he and Victoria had a particularly close marriage. We were talking in front of the building as Kate was returning from the beach. "What a day," she said. I can't wait to relax tomorrow. I need to sleep in, maybe read by the pool, and not think about anything. Tomorrow at 9:30? Trevor said. Huh. I was somewhat confused. I was glad he had become such a good friend that he felt comfortable making plans. But he could wait until we asked him. Sounds good, Kate said, and that was the end of it. Thursday morning, I was already up and working by 5 a.m. The markets were volatile, which was very stressful. Most importantly, you had to stay ahead of trends to be successful. Suddenly, my office door opened. Marcus, you're not ready. We're leaving in 10 minutes, Kate announced. I completely forgot, I said. There was no way I could leave. Kate, honey, I don't think I can go today, at least not right now, I told her. I could see she was starting to get frustrated. That's when my phone rang. Before answering, I asked, "Can you just go with Trevor?" She looked at me for a long moment, turned, and walked away. I answered the phone, and that was the end of the discussion. Good thing we were in the Eastern time zone, and by mid-afternoon, things had effectively settled down. I thought about getting dressed and trying to find them. I called Kate, but she didn't answer. I closed my eyes just for a moment. I must have fallen into a deep sleep because the next thing I knew, Kate was kissing me awake. I realized from the light that it was about 6 p.m. We made love, and after a few minutes, she silently got up and walked to the bathroom. The door closed, and I heard the shower turn on. After she emerged, I thanked her for the pleasant homecoming, and I barely managed to get a smile from her. I asked about her beach day, and she replied that they went to Key Biscayne. I tried to get details about her day, but she was unusually quiet and reserved. If we hadn't just had incredible intimacy, I'd start to wonder if I'd done something wrong. My work continued to be demanding, and Friday was another long day. Kate was in and out of the apartment all day, enjoying her summer freedom. It was a relaxing weekend, but I still had the impression that something wasn't quite right. When I asked Kate about it, she said everything was fine. It was Monday, and the insurance markets were volatile. I was making money, but the stress was significant. I was building profits in my personal consulting account. My goal was to retire early and enjoy life in Miami to the fullest. Kate was still enjoying her summer break. Thursday morning, I was working intensively, and she appeared around 9 o'clock. "Are you going to the beach?" she asked. I looked up, and she could see the answer was no. I was buried in my notes and focused on both computer screens. I had to leave for Chicago next Tuesday for meetings and mentoring, and I had a lot to prepare before then. I was stressed. She kissed my cheek with an odd expression and was about to leave when my phone rang. Soon I was analyzing weather-related claims patterns. At 6:30 that evening, the dinner table was set with sushi I'd picked up in town. I wanted to make it up to Kate since I'd been so busy lately. By 7 o'clock, she still wasn't home, so I finally called her. "Where are you?" I asked. "I'll be there in 2 minutes," she said. She arrived and thanked me for the thoughtful dinner. I asked about her day, and it seemed she and Trevor had been at the beach again. I started doing deep breathing exercises to stay calm. "What beach did you go to today?" I asked. She hesitated, looked away, and said, "Key Biscayne." For some reason, I felt like she wasn't being completely honest. I knew I was leaving in a few days, and I wanted to keep things peaceful, so I didn't question her further, at least for now. After dinner, we were both lost in our thoughts. "Marcus," she asked, "do you think we're getting the most out of life?" That was really strange. "Yeah," I said. "I mean, don't you think our lives are pretty good? That there's more to experience than what we're currently living?" "Not really, but why do you ask?" I had no idea what she was getting at or where these deep philosophical questions were coming from. "Oh, never mind," she said, and before we could continue the discussion, she fell asleep on the couch. On Friday, suddenly the markets stabilized. I wasn't sure how long this would last, but if typical patterns held, the next few weeks should be manageable. I left the office mid-afternoon on Friday, but Kate wasn't at the apartment. I called her, thinking maybe we could do something fun together, but she didn't answer. I decided to go for a run along Ocean Drive. After my run, I headed for the shower. It looked like Kate was just finishing hers. We passed like ships in the night. She was leaving as I was entering the bathroom. She seemed uninterested in conversation. Friday night was community social night. On the way downstairs, I asked Kate about her day, but I didn't get specific answers about what she had done. We set up in our usual spot near the Rodriguez family. Robert and David were there too. Trevor was absent, and to be honest, I was getting a little tired of him. Besides, it seemed like Kate was spending more time with him than I was. I was trying to keep my jealousy in check. I saw Jake Morrison, whom I'd grown to really like. We started talking, and he told me about his marine biology research. It was genuinely interesting. "Marcus, why don't you come out on the boat with me on Monday? I have an experiment to conduct that day, and I think you'd find it interesting," Jake said. "Maybe, but what time?" I asked. The markets had slowed down, and I was working less intensively. Kate was enjoying her summer break, so it seemed like a good opportunity. "I'll be at the Miami Beach Marina at 11 o'clock. If you know where Trevor moors his boat, I'm a couple of slips below that. It's called the Sea Breeze, you won't miss it. If you're not there by 11:30, I'll assume something came up," he told me. When I returned to our table, I didn't see Kate. I tried to act casual, but I couldn't spot her anywhere. I talked with Robert and David, occasionally glancing around searching for Kate. After a few minutes, Robert said, "I think I saw your wife outside by the pool area." "Oh," I said, quickly glancing in that direction. "Don't worry, your friend Mr. Blackwell was with her," David added, perhaps with a note of concern. "Go find her, my friend," Robert suggested, and I walked away. When I approached them, they seemed to be having an intense conversation. I didn't like the way Kate was looking at him, as if every word he said had deep meaning. They didn't notice me until I was practically next to them. When they saw me, Kate looked flustered, like she'd been caught doing something inappropriate. Trevor maintained his charming demeanor, but I was starting to see that charm in a different light. "Marcus!" Trevor exclaimed and moved to hug me. I didn't reciprocate. "What's with the private meeting away from the party?" I asked. Kate still hadn't said anything and looked at a loss for words. Trevor stepped into the conversation. "Sometimes the regular crowd gets a little predictable," he said. "I was just sharing with Kate some of my stress management techniques. Even during summer break, there can be pressures, planning for the next school year, family expectations. There are many ways to stay calm and deal with these pressures," he said thoughtfully. Kate looked at me hopefully, hoping I'd believe the explanation that had just come out of his mouth. "And Kate, since when do you two know each other well enough for personal counseling sessions?" "Actually, Marcus, we've been discussing the possibility of the three of us having some counseling sessions to expand our perspectives on life. As I mentioned, I don't charge for my sessions. This is my contribution to humanity," he continued. I looked directly at Kate and said, "I'm going back to our friends. I'll have a couple more beers and then head home. You can join me if you want." I deliberately ignored Trevor and all the nonsense he had just said. A contribution to humanity? I walked back to our table, and about 30 seconds later, Kate was beside me. "Why were you so rude to Trevor? He's become your good friend," she asked in a quiet but firm voice. I sat for a while and then told her, "I'm starting to sense something about him that I don't really like." "What are you talking about?" she asked. With all the stress in my life lately and knowing I was leaving for Chicago in a few days for almost 2 weeks, I really didn't want to get into it with her. I was making a mental note to distance myself from him as soon as I returned from my business trip. Kate and I were also going to have a serious conversation when I got back. "Never mind," I said. "We'll talk about it when I get back from Chicago." But I wouldn't be coming back the same man. On Monday, I joined Jake on the Sea Breeze. We talked about his work, the ocean, and marine life in the area. It was genuinely fascinating, and he seemed passionate about it. I'm working on a project with bull sharks in the Miami area. I'm collaborating with the University of Miami Marine Science Program. We've developed an experimental attractant that I believe will quickly lure sharks to the area where it's deployed. If we learn what attracts them, we hope to reverse engineer the process and create an effective repellent. I've never actually tested this particular formula. Marcus, you'll be the first witness to this experiment. Jake pulled what looked like an 8-ounce bottle from a styrofoam cooler. He lowered a protein ball made from fish scraps and seaweed into the water, then poured about half the container over it and released it. He then set the timer on his watch. Jake explained that sharks have an exceptional sense of smell and that bull sharks can detect odors from over a mile away. We watched and waited. Nothing happened initially. Just wait. I'm confident about this, he assured me. Suddenly, the surface of the ocean seemed to change and come alive. I saw my first dorsal fin, then another, then another. The protein mixture was suddenly attacked and quickly consumed with brutal intensity. It was both exciting and terrifying. Jake explained that bull sharks are aggressive feeders with powerful jaws that can crush almost anything. Bull sharks can reach 12 feet in length and are considered among the most dangerous predators in these waters. The boat was bumped a couple of times, but within 15 minutes, the sea was calm again. That was incredible, I said to Jake. He seemed pleased with the results and took time to record data on his tablet. It certainly doesn't make me want to get in the water anytime soon, I added. It was a very artificial situation, Jake told me. Without the attractant, we never would have been able to lure the sharks here. Jake went below deck to secure his tablet, and I looked at the containers in the styrofoam cooler. It appeared there were about a dozen bottles in the cooler, somewhat carelessly stored. Interesting, I thought. A moment later, Jake returned to the deck. Marcus, there was another reason I asked you to come with me today, Jake said with a serious expression. You can tell me to mind my own business when I'm done, but there's something I think you need to know. I was confused, to say the least. I kept quiet and listened to what Jake had to say. He asked if I remembered his older sister, Sam. How could I forget that beautiful woman? She was married to a great guy, Ben Green. Ben handled finances for tech companies, and they would visit our family condo in Miami 3 or 4 times a year. Ben was able to do some of his work remotely. Apparently, Ben became friends with some of the other residents of the Meridian about 2 years ago, including Trevor Blackwell. Trevor has a smooth charm and asks questions that soon become very personal, Jake said. Yeah, I know, I replied. One day, Ben had to return to California early for a client emergency, and Sam continued her vacation. Trevor became increasingly close to her. I was an undergraduate at the University of Florida at the time. All this information came from Sam later. While Ben was away, Trevor pursued Sam relentlessly. He talked about his counseling sessions and how he helps people expand their horizons and live more experiential lives. It sounded familiar. Long story short, Sam became involved with him during what he called a therapeutic session. She soon realized he was no different from a manipulative predator trying to take advantage of a vulnerable woman. She was angry at him and even angrier at herself for falling for his manipulation. Trevor tried to continue the relationship, but Sam told him to back off. About a week later, Ben returned. Sam felt so much guilt that she told Ben everything. Ben was furious and went looking for Trevor. Trevor was smart enough to stay away. Sam and Ben tried to work things out, but the combination of her guilt and his anger proved too much, and they divorced. She hasn't seriously dated anyone since. I still talk to Ben sometimes. He's a good guy. I think he's engaged to someone now. Jake told me that Trevor had ruined Sam's life. I was just sitting there thinking, Trevor Blackwell is a manipulative predator. I genuinely thought he was a good friend. Marcus, I promised Sam I wouldn't tell anyone about this. But when I see him interacting with Kate, I remember what Sam told me about how he manipulated her. She also made me promise never to get into a physical confrontation with him, even though I wanted to confront the bastard. Sam is ashamed of the whole situation and is heartbroken that it cost her marriage. Does Victoria, his wife, know about all this? I asked. I'm sure she knows, or at least suspects. Rumor has it they don't have a prenuptial agreement. If she divorced him, she'd lose a fortune. She's wealthy. They stay married but live essentially separate lives. I leave for Australia next week and won't return for several months. I didn't want to question Kate's judgment. I just wanted to give you this information, Jake said. Thank you, I said. I had a lot to think about. We docked at the marina and gathered our gear. As we walked up the pier, Jake set down the styrofoam cooler and opened it. I could see him mentally counting the bottles. Suddenly, he looked up at me. I looked him in the eye and didn't say anything. We stared at each other, and then a small smile appeared on his face. No words were spoken. As I drove home, I started to feel sick. I was going to confront Trevor, I thought. In my anger, I almost ran a stop sign and nearly hit a local cyclist. He gestured angrily at me, and I didn't blame him. It reminded me of another incident that had happened about 7 or 8 years ago in Chicago. I've always had a temper. I won't go into details, but there had been issues in my family growing up. There was conflict in our household, and because of that, I had anger management problems. That energy actually helped me on the football field in high school. I played with intensity and eventually earned a scholarship to DePaul University. It was the only way I could afford college since my family had no money for tuition. So in a way, my temper helped me get a college degree, but along the way, it cost me relationships and friendships. I knew I needed to address it. At that point, I had recently graduated from college and was still new to the insurance business, which was stressful. One Monday evening, I was driving through downtown Chicago. If you've never been there, the concentration of homeless people, addicts, and troublemakers is higher than usual in certain areas. I was worked up and not focused on driving when I almost hit a skateboarder in an intersection. I held up my hands to let him know it was my fault. Well, this tall, skinny punk took his skateboard, swung it around, and smashed my headlight. I jumped out of the car, and the punk and his friends started throwing things at me and yelling about the damage. As I was facing the tall guy, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed movement. My athletic reflexes kicked in, and I dodged another guy trying to hit me with his skateboard. He caught me in the shoulder, and it hurt, but I could still function. I immediately turned toward him and landed a straight right punch to his jaw, and he went down. I was glad I had trained at a local boxing gym. Instinctively, I ducked, expecting an attack from the first punk. Once again, I avoided a skateboard aimed at my head. Are these guys practicing to use these things as weapons? He raised it again to attack, and I hit him hard in the face. I heard something crack. In a moment of rage, I kept hitting him. I must have landed 3 or 4 more punches before I was tackled from behind by police officers. I found myself in the back of a police car. Across the intersection, an ambulance pulled up, and on the other side, there was another police car with its lights flashing. There were many people around wanting to see what was happening. I prayed no one there would recognize me. Fortunately, there were witnesses who told the police that I was attacked first. 2 against 1. Someone even had cell phone video showing they were the aggressors. They took my information and released me. They said I would probably be contacted in the next few days. The next afternoon, I got a call from the police asking me to come in later to make a statement, which I did. Here's what happened. There was no doubt in anyone's mind that I was defending myself. There was plenty of evidence to support that. It turned out the first guy I hit had a dislocated jaw and would need extensive dental work. The second guy had a broken nose and orbital bone. Because of the severity of the injuries, I needed to meet with an assistant district attorney. We had a long discussion, and she said no charges would be filed against me, but I would have to undergo mandatory counseling with a therapist specializing in anger management. For the next 8 weeks, I was scheduled for group therapy every Wednesday evening at a community center. I probably could have objected, but I knew something needed to be done. Truth be told, this counseling really helped me and changed my life in several ways. I learned how to control myself when I get angry. Slow down, think about the situation, analyze it, and make a plan. All the while, I take deep breaths to calm down. Deep breaths, deep breaths. It has really helped. Friends and colleagues remarked that I seemed more relaxed, was in a good mood more often, didn't get angry as frequently, and laughed more. I also started to attract more women. Perhaps they had been intimidated by my anger before. Speaking of women, it was at that community center that I met Kate. I noticed her in the corridors, this incredible-looking woman with a hint of sadness about her. One evening after a counseling session, I offered to take her out for coffee, and to my surprise, she agreed. I truly believe that without the counseling I received, I never would have approached her. My goal initially was simply to pursue her, and we eventually became intimate, but along the way, I started to genuinely care for her. It was unclear to me if she felt the same way, but she kept saying yes when I asked her out. She would tell me I was different from others she had dated. At the time, I didn't know if that was good or bad. Eventually, we ended up together, and she certainly knew what she was doing as we lay there afterward. She asked, "So this is our last date?" and looked at me. I was actually thinking about how to end things gracefully. I liked her, and I had just discovered she was incredible in bed, but I really wasn't looking for commitment. I must have hesitated too long because she started crying quietly. Wait, I said. No one is talking about a last date, at least I'm not. Now tell me why the tears. We talked, and she told me how wonderful I was and that I was so different from typical guys, and that all the men she had dated were self-centered jerks. I didn't ask her for details about all those jerks, but I'm sure there were stories. Thinking of Kate now, she looks great, she's fun to be with, she's intelligent. No real flaws that I could see. We continued dating and, as you know, stayed together at least until now. Back to Miami, in the present moment. At the intersection on Ocean Drive, I stopped to collect my thoughts. I didn't know if anything had happened between Kate and Trevor yet, but now I knew Trevor's pattern. My goal was to get both Kate and myself away from his influence. After that, I would need to develop a serious plan regarding Kate. As Robert once told me, a good relationship is built on trust. Currently, our foundation wasn't as strong as I would have liked it to be. I was considering canceling the Chicago trip, but I was positioning myself for a significant opportunity in the next few weeks. The hurricane season was approaching, and with the information I would gain from the conference and, more importantly, from Kevin, my brilliant meteorologist friend, I was confident I could make the right moves in weather-related claims. I stayed calm, went into surveillance mode, and was determined to find out what was happening with Kate and Trevor. She came home Monday night in a bad mood. I was trying to figure out how to approach the subject, but the timing wasn't right. If I pushed her at the wrong time, it could backfire and make it much harder to get any information. Tuesday evening was different. She was more relaxed and friendly after spending the day at the beach, and we enjoyed a nice dinner. I told her that Robert and David were taking me to the airport Wednesday morning and asked if she could pick me up the following Friday. She agreed. "Kate," I asked, "are you sure you can't come with me? It would be like a vacation." I knew there was little chance, but I had to try. She didn't even consider it and quickly dismissed the possibility, citing her summer plans and commitments. Then I started broaching the uncomfortable subject of Trevor. I told her I thought we needed to put some distance between ourselves and him. I told her, without elaborating, that I'd heard some concerning things about him. I asked her to stay away from him while I was gone. She flared up. How dare I say such things about our friend Trevor? He had been counseling her and helping her feel much better, she added. Now I wanted her to stay away from him for 2 weeks when she had no other close friends. She was angry, and now I was angry too. "I don't trust him, and neither should you," I stated. "Here we go with the jealousy again," she said. It escalated from there. She ended up sleeping in the guest room, even after I tried to apologize. The evening really went downhill. I got a brief kiss and hug before leaving for the airport, but it wasn't warm. I felt like our marriage was in trouble, and she had no idea how serious the situation was. I remembered a bumper sticker I once saw. The first line read, "If you love something, set it free," and the second line read, "If it doesn't come back, hunt it down and destroy it." It seemed appropriate for the current situation. Because of the time change, it was already evening when I landed in Chicago. I rented a car and headed to the hotel. It was 9:30 Central Time, which meant 10:30 p.m. in Miami. I didn't call her that night. I was exhausted. The next day, there was the insurance conference, and I gathered valuable information about hurricane claims processing. Afterward, I chatted with several colleagues and learned useful insights about weather-related damage assessment. I entered my notes on my tablet, and someone mentioned there was a cocktail reception in the next room. I checked my watch. It was a little after 6 p.m. Central Time, which meant 7 p.m. in Miami. I tried calling Kate, but she didn't answer. I had a few drinks and enough appetizers that I didn't need dinner. Around 8:30 p.m. Central Time, I tried calling again, but there was no answer. The conference concluded Friday mid-afternoon. I felt the information I received was valuable for the upcoming storm season. While I was entering new notes, Kate called. "Hi, how's the conference going?" she asked, and we discussed my trip so far. "I tried to call you yesterday. What have you been up to?" I asked. I wanted to find out what she'd been doing, but I was walking on thin ice. Fighting about Trevor wasn't going to lead anywhere productive. She said she was doing the usual summer things, going to the beach, reading, working on some art projects. I asked if she had gone to the beach yesterday, and she said yes, but not for long. I asked which beach. She hesitated and said Key Biscayne. I really wanted to ask if Trevor was with her, but I held back. I asked what her plans were for the weekend. She told me there was no community social tonight and that she planned to have a quiet weekend reading and relaxing. I told her I loved her as we hung up. This phone conversation went well. My strategy was to be sweet and loving. If Trevor tried to manipulate her, I hoped her love for me would overcome his advances. On Saturday, I was heading to the Nash house in Schaumburg. They had been our neighbors in Naperville when I was growing up. Mr. and Mrs. Nash are good people, and I'm always happy to see them. Like I said, Kevin is unusual. He literally lives in his parents' finished basement, but it's not as pathetic as you might think. One of Kevin's habits is that he's absolutely meticulous. Everything in his basement workspace is clean and organized. He has filing cabinets and bookshelves where everything is cataloged and systematized. He sits at his desk, which is in the center of the basement. There are 2 large monitors on the desk, and in the corner is a small daybed where he sleeps. Kevin is dressed in slacks and a short-sleeved button-up shirt. He rarely leaves the house. You can see he's happy to see me. I don't think he has many visitors. We spend time talking about the past, our old neighborhood, and people we grew up with. Honestly, for me, it's an enjoyable way to spend time with Kevin. I don't know exactly how he makes money or who pays him, but I do know he earns income. He builds complex computer weather models using all sorts of data, both current and historical. He's tried to explain this to me before, but I quickly get lost. Like I said, Kevin is brilliant. I've asked him before if he ever provides information to people in my business. He said no. If Kevin can be trusted on anything, he's completely honest. I have a list of things I want to ask him about. I have to make sure he stays on task, or we'll branch off into topics that could take hours to cover. I ask him specific questions and also request him to chart weather patterns for the next 90 days or so, incorporating various factors into his equations. This kind of long-range forecasting helps me anticipate insurance claims from severe weather events, especially with hurricane season approaching. His mother brings us lunch, and we continue talking for a few more hours. Then I leave, telling him I'll call. "Please don't," Kevin says. He doesn't like phones. He sends me the weather maps I requested within 24 hours. In the evening, I try to call Kate but get voicemail again. Sunday, I go for a run, return to the hotel, and start working on a claims analysis strategy based on the information I've gathered. I have a really strong feeling about this hurricane season. I've never done such thorough research before. Kate and I finally connect by phone, and she seems eager to talk to me. I think that's a positive sign. She's asking me about the conference and my visit with Kevin. Her voice sounds very upbeat. "Oh, Marcus, I just love this place. Miami has everything I wanted and more. I love the weather, I love our condo, and the summer break is exactly what I needed after this past school year. I'm just thrilled with our decision to move," she exclaimed. It made me happy. It was really my decision to move, and Kate had some reservations initially. I'm glad she likes Miami as much as I do. I asked her what had caused such sudden enthusiasm. "I've been connecting with Trevor, and he's helping me better understand myself and what life experiences can offer," she continued. I wasn't speaking. I started to get angry. I took so many deep breaths I thought I might hyperventilate. I wondered what kind of manipulation this predator was feeding her. After hearing Jake's story, I could guess. "Oh, really?" I said calmly. "Tell me about how he's helping you." I sat and listened as she talked about how she was feeling, what life had to offer, expanding her horizons, and finding true happiness in all areas of her life. How Trevor was helping her realize things that explained some of her negative feelings about herself and our relationship. I was starting to feel nauseous. I was afraid I was going to explode. I used one of my anger management techniques and calmly but firmly ended the conversation. I told her I'd call her later in the week. I pondered the situation. Jake's story about Sam kept replaying in my head. I had several options. 1. I could book a flight home and intervene immediately. That was ruled out. It would seem desperate and controlling. 2. I could trust that she loves me too much to give in to him. I'd say it was 50-50 at this point. 3. Accept the fact that they had become or would become involved and divorce her. This was painful to think about. I started to develop a fourth option. My mentoring week went well. My trainee was a young woman named Michelle Rodriguez. Michelle was hardworking and eager to learn the claims investigation process. Each day, I spent several hours studying my own case workload. The insurance market was stable, and Kevin's weather forecasts were proving accurate. I had an analysis strategy for the next few weeks that was going to be very profitable for the company. Monday, I don't call Kate, and she doesn't call me. I know she's enjoying her summer break. Tuesday morning, she called around 11 a.m. Central Time. I was at the hotel office center, and we only talked for a few minutes. The enthusiastic excitement from our previous phone conversation continued. The week was flying by, and it was the end of the workday on Thursday. My plane left O'Hare Friday morning. I took my trainee Michelle out for a drink to celebrate her successful mentorship. It was a pleasant evening, and we talked mostly about claims investigation techniques. On the way back to my hotel, I was relatively calm about what I might learn about the situation with Kate and Trevor. If he and his manipulation had succeeded with her, it was over. What I would do next had been determined. If the seduction hadn't happened, my strategy would be to slowly and decisively cut Trevor out of our lives. The flight arrived in Miami around 4 p.m. One of the small things I like about Miami International is its efficiency. Everything moves quickly. Kate picked me up at the curb. Kate was in a good mood, a little strange but good. She talked a lot, laughed frequently, and smiled constantly. She asked me questions about the trip, but when I started telling her about the Nash family or my mentoring or whatever, it was like she wasn't interested. She would ask me another question before I even finished answering the previous one. It was weird. It was Friday, and there was a community social at the pool. I was tired, but I asked her if she wanted to go. "I don't care either way. I don't mind if we don't go," she said. That was strange too. Kate loves any kind of social gathering, and we hadn't missed one since we'd lived here. I thought maybe there was some reason she didn't want to attend. I think that would be fun, I said. I've been away too long, and I feel like having a couple of drinks by the pool. Kate was silent for a moment. I wouldn't mind being alone with you, she said, stroking my arm. Okay, I said. We'll stop by for an hour or so, and then we'll reconnect privately. Kate said nothing, but the issue was settled. We went down a little after 6 o'clock to the usual gathering. Everyone was in their typical spots, but so far I didn't see Trevor. It was a very typical community social evening. We saw Robert and David, the Rodriguez family, and the Nakamuras, the couple who had moved here a few months ago. I knew Jake was in Australia, but I saw Sam across the pool area and got up to talk to her. I knew I couldn't say anything about her relationship with Trevor. I had promised Jake I wouldn't. We started talking, and she was very pleasant. She told me she was staying at their family condo indefinitely while Jake was in Australia. Sometimes it's better to stay at the condo while Jake's gone. There's plenty of room, but sometimes I start to feel like I'm babysitting my little brother and all his dates, she said with a laugh. After a while, I glanced across the pool area, and Kate was looking at me with a slight frown. Maybe it was her turn to feel a little jealous. Sam and I continued talking for another half hour or so. Every once in a while, I could sense sadness creeping into her conversation as we moved to certain topics. I told her how much I enjoyed talking with her, but it was time for me to rejoin my wife. As I left, I got a brief but pleasant hug from her. Back at our table, I didn't see Kate. The ever-observant Robert noticed I was looking for her. I think Mrs. Thompson left about 15 minutes ago, he told me. Oh, she must be back at the condo, I said, heading toward the building. Marcus, he said. I believe she was headed toward Mr. Blackwell's apartment. And dear friend, it's none of my business, but while you were away, they spent considerable time together. Robert told me this with an expression of genuine concern. Nodding slowly as I absorbed this information, I turned to Robert and gave him a brief hug, thanking him. He seemed surprised by the embrace. I went to our condo. My next drink had more rum than mixer, and the ones after that were mostly rum. It wasn't even 9 p.m. yet, and alcohol and jet lag were making me drowsy. When I woke up, it was 2:30 in the morning. I didn't want to wake Kate, so I headed to the spare bedroom. I took a short nap, but by 6 o'clock in the morning, I was up and out for a run along Ocean Drive. I had a lot to think about. Kate's behavior, Trevor, the insurance market, Robert's comments, and I also thought about Sam Morrison. One thing was certain. Kate and I were going to have a very frank conversation about Trevor in the near future. Back at the condominium, Kate was drinking her morning coffee. She smiled and asked how my run went. Fine, I replied, then asked her about last night. What happened last night? I went back to the table, and you were gone. Where did you go? I'm pretty sure she went to Trevor's apartment. I just wasn't feeling the party last night. I needed a break, she told me. Well, you weren't here when I got back, I said. Where did you go? You know how it is. Sometimes you just don't feel like being at a party. You looked like you were having a good time, and I didn't want to interrupt your fun, she told me with a forced smile. Kate, for the third time, I said, a little more forcefully but still calmly, where did you go? She paused, looked at me, then lowered her eyes. After about a minute, she said, I went to talk to Trevor. I tried to stay calm, but I was starting to get angry. So your husband's been gone for almost 2 weeks, and you end up spending Friday evening with Trevor instead of welcoming me home? You weren't acting like yourself when you got home. She told me that I was furious. She was avoiding my questions, and her relationship with Trevor had become inappropriate. It was damaging our marriage. I needed to know the truth about what was happening. When I questioned her about her relationship with Trevor, she finally said the following. He's been counseling me. He really understands me. He shows me how to experience more and live a fuller life. When I'm with him, I'm calm. My stress disappears, and I can physically relax. What kind of manipulation was this predator feeding her? I lost my temper, started yelling, and told her I was going to confront him and settle this once and for all. We had a major fight and she left. I decided not to go to Trevor's apartment right then. I was practicing calming exercises. Deep breath, deep exhale. I couldn't afford an assault charge at this time. I spent the day at the condo, and Kate didn't come back. I wouldn't be surprised if she was at Trevor's place. Earlier in the day, I texted her, telling her we needed to have a serious conversation. A few hours later, she replied that she'd be home at 6 p.m. and was ready to talk. All afternoon, I planned my strategy. It basically came down to what I was thinking while I was in Chicago. If she had become involved with him, we were finished. If she hadn't, we would cut him out of our lives completely. I had another plan for Trevor. At 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Why was she ringing the doorbell? When I opened it, I saw Kate and her escort, Trevor. He looked at me with a calm and smug expression. I flared up quickly, going into calming exercises for several reasons, including not attacking him. What is he doing here? I asked. Kate looked at me with an expression of forced patience. Trevor and I have a lot to tell you, and it would be best if we discussed it all together. Trevor and her? I wanted to throw him out, but curiosity about what they were going to say overrode my initial impulse. I really needed to know what was happening. Okay, I said. Why don't you start telling me what's going on? We moved into the living room. They sat on the couch facing me. I sat in the chair. Marcus, you know I've had self-esteem issues my whole life, she said. She looked at me, waiting for a response. I just stared back at her. Well, she continued, I'm beginning to understand the origins of some of these problems. Trevor is helping me access this information. I feel so strong and happy. For the first time in my life, I feel genuinely fulfilled. Are you telling me you're not happy in our marriage? I asked her. No, Marcus, honey. I love you. You're wonderful. It's not about you, it's about me. About understanding myself, pushing my boundaries, and ultimately being the best life partner for you. Trevor is teaching me so much, she said. I'm close, Marcus. I'm almost at the point where I can live life to the fullest, she pleaded. Outwardly, I was calm, but inside, I was more than angry. Her naivety and his manipulation really affected me. Deep breaths, make a plan. I sat back and stayed calm and didn't say anything. I guess they thought I didn't understand. Marcus? Trevor cut in with a professorial expression. There's a little child living inside each of us, seeking parental approval. Kate has abandonment issues stemming from her father's departure. She used her appearance to try to get that validation. What are we in first-year psychology? I wondered if this predator believed the nonsense that came out of his mouth. He continued to talk about expanding horizons, breaking down personal barriers, and learning about all aspects of life. I was starting to get tired of it all and actually zoned out, but I did notice one thing. Kate was looking at him in a different way than I had seen her look at Dr. Alexander Hayes all those months ago. She was completely under his spell. It seemed all his chatter had come to an end, and then he said something that shocked me. Kate will stay with me for the next week, and we can work through the final obstacles and get her ready for a complete life. What? I yelled. You're moving out? It's hard to stay calm with news like this. Marcus, honey? She was literally on her knees, hands clasped together as if in prayer. It's only for a week or so. At that, a hopeful smile appeared on her face, as if she wanted me to realize the importance of all this. Are you sleeping with this guy? I asked. At this point, I needed to sort this out and figure out what was really happening. Oh, Marcus, physical intimacy is so unimportant in the scheme of life, she said. Trevor nodded wisely, as if his student had learned her lesson well and the professor approved. Marcus, Trevor speculated. The human race has many ways to communicate. Sight, sound, hearing, and of course, touch. Traditional morals can limit people in what they can experience in order to live the most fulfilling life possible. So basically, he just told me they were having relations. I remembered that first time at the beach when he looked at her in her bikini. "Kate," I said, making one last attempt, "don't do this. You're my wife. We have some problems, but we can work through this. Don't leave me." "Honey," she pleaded. "It's just a week. One little week out of our entire lives. I'm going to come back and be the best version of myself for you for the rest of our lives." She said this while looking at me with the same blissful smile on her face. With those words, Trevor stood up, and Kate followed suit. As they walked out the door, she called out, "I love you." I hardly slept that night. I knew my marriage was over, and I wasn't as sad as I might have expected. Mostly I was angry, particularly angry at Trevor. I was starting to finalize my plan. I had done considerable research, and I had determined exactly what type of predator Trevor was. He considered himself an apex predator. It's not enough for him to seduce a woman. It's not enough for him to seduce another man's woman. It's also not enough for him to seduce another man's woman while the man knows about it. He needs to seduce another man's woman and have the man accept it. That's not going to happen here. Sunday morning, I headed out for a run along Ocean Drive. It was a busy street this morning. Along the way, I was deep in thought, working on my acting skills. For my plan to work, I had to be believable. On my way back, I saw Sam outside the building. I waved at her and we started talking. She said she was heading out for coffee, and I asked if I could join her. "Will Kate be joining us too?" she asked. I hesitated and then told her we were not together. She said she saw us 2 nights ago at the community social together. I told her it was a long story if she was interested. I felt that with all the gossip at the Meridian, she already had an idea. "Sure, I'm interested. Let's get some coffee," Sam replied. We went to Ocean Cafe. We sat outside, and I was appropriately dressed in my running clothes. I told Sam a very brief version of my situation with Kate and Trevor. She was quiet, just taking it all in, but I could tell it was very personal to her. "We both got hurt because of Trevor Blackwell," I said. As we walked back, we talked about other topics, and we had a really good conversation. I was starting to like Sam. We got back, and I asked her if we could get together next weekend. She started to shake her head no, and I stopped her. "Sam, I'm not Trevor," I said. "I like you as a friend. At the moment, I'm married, but I expect my marital status to change very quickly. You know why? For now, 2 friends spending time together." She smiled, and it was like sunshine. "I guess I'd like to see you again, but for now we're just friends." She gave me a brief hug and kissed my cheek. As she walked away, I noticed there was a bounce in her step. It was Monday, and the insurance markets were stable, but I felt major changes would come quickly with hurricane season approaching. I had been studying Kevin's models, and they matched the information from the insurance conference. I was making significant moves in weather-related claims analysis. I was getting positioned for storm season before other adjusters had time to react. I have my own consulting LLC that's structured through several entities. It's legal, I just like to keep things separate. It may eventually be traced to me, but it would take considerable resources. This is my side business account. Through the LLC, I take on additional claims work. If I do this right, I should have at least $500,000 in my business account by the end of hurricane season. I hadn't seen either Kate or Trevor at the Meridian since Saturday night. That was fine, but I needed to contact Trevor as part of my plan. I got up early on Wednesday, and so far, everything was looking positive with my weather analysis. I was seeing trends in storm patterns, and it appeared others were beginning to see them too. The big difference was that I had managed to get positioned while the market was favorable. At 9:30 in the morning, I took a walk around the grounds of the Meridian. On the lawn, I saw Trevor practicing martial arts. I quickly visualized myself as a defeated, insecure man. I approached him, and I think he initially thought I was going to attack him. I apologized for startling him and thanked him for helping Kate. I asked if we could talk sometime. Nodding, he agreed it was a good idea. Suddenly, as if it had just occurred to me, I told him I needed one more dive to get certified as a scuba diver. Could we go? He would instruct me and help me complete my certification. I asked him not to say anything to Kate about us getting together. I don't want to distract her from the work you and she are doing together. I told him with a sincere and serious expression. We agreed to meet at the Miami Beach Marina on Thursday at 3 p.m. I embraced him as we parted. Thank God this guy has such a massive ego. He wants to complete his domination of me by getting me to accept his seduction of my wife. Plays right into my plan. I had an appointment with a divorce attorney that afternoon. I discussed the situation with my new lawyer, Gerald Chin. He asked me what level of aggressiveness I wanted to approach this case with. Public humiliation, temporary support, restraining orders, accusations of adultery, what would I want to pursue? I told him I needed to think it through. I asked him to start the paperwork. I got up early Thursday morning. There was a lot to do. First was a long bike ride north on Ocean Drive toward the Fort Lauderdale area. I got back before 10 a.m. I checked my work emails, and everything seemed to be following my forecasts. I was supposed to meet Trevor at the marina at 3 o'clock. After taking care of some errands, I arrived there shortly after 2 o'clock. I carefully loaded my gear onto his boat. I was wearing a cheap, flowery Hawaiian shirt and a large sun hat. I never wear clothes like that. He showed up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I acted submissive and deferential, trying to inflate his ego. We talked constantly as we headed out to sea. Marcus, he began. I thought you had an inner ear problem that prevented you from diving. I got a second opinion and was told I was probably descending too quickly. It will take me longer to reach reef level, but I was assured that if I go down slowly, I'll be fine. That was complete nonsense, but he believed it. Tell me, I asked, how is Kate doing? I was glad his ego was so inflated that I didn't sense any suspicion about my real intentions. He said she was evolving. He had put her in a program that helps her discover herself. She was blossoming, and her beauty was also blossoming, he said. She was overcoming self-doubt and expanding her horizons in all aspects of her life. In fact, he said, when she returns to your bed, you will be very pleased with all she has learned. I am happy to be her instructor, and you will be the beneficiary of her acquired skills. Kate is a very sensual woman. It took all my self-control not to attack him at that moment, but I remained calmly submissive. I nodded as if everything he'd said suddenly made sense. Thank you, I told him with a look of amazement. He was buying it. The average man, he nodded in my direction, has no idea what to do with a beautiful woman like Kate. You have to understand them first and work through all the layers until you know exactly what they want. I've helped many women better understand their own sexuality. Like I said, that's my gift to those I counsel. If the sea had been rougher, I might have attributed my nausea to seasickness. But no, the sea was calm today. In life, you will encounter people who are not like typical members of society, he continued. In nature, there are predators. The same is true of humans. Marcus, I will tell you without false modesty that I am at the top of the food chain. I see what I want and I take it. I'm a predator. I did my best to act like every word he said had profound meaning. It was truly disgusting. Ah, he announced. We're here. Couldn't be better. I grabbed his shorty wetsuit and helped him prepare for the dive. By the time he surfaced from checking the anchor, everything was ready. I was still rummaging around with my gear in my large equipment bag. Looks like you packed for a week, he said. I just laughed. As he put on his wetsuit, he noticed a peculiar odor. He sniffed the air, and a puzzled expression appeared on his face. I stood a little farther away but watched him closely. He shook his head as if this was just one of life's minor mysteries and walked down the stainless steel ladder into the sea. Before diving underwater, I told Trevor it would be about 15 minutes before I could descend to the reef. I needed to go down slowly, I explained. He waved dismissively, as if my situation was of no consequence to him. That's when I remembered that when Jake used the attractant, he only used half the bottle. I wondered what the reaction would be with a full bottle. The final step, I raised the dive ladder to the deck level. There was now 3 feet of smooth fiberglass between the ocean and the deck railing, making it difficult to climb over. I put on my shorty in case he surfaced unexpectedly. Now I was just waiting for the show to start. Nothing happened initially. Did I do something wrong? I waited and watched. After a few minutes, I noticed the surface of the ocean began to change. I noticed dorsal fins. There they were. An instant later, Trevor surfaced about 20 yards away. "Shark!" he yelled and swam frantically toward the boat that I watched with a mixture of fascination and detachment, feeling no remorse. Strangely enough, he made it to the boat but found the ladder missing. "Marcus!" he shouted. "Get the ladder down. There are sharks in the water." "But I thought you were a predator," I said with mock sincerity. "Marcus, for God's sake, please help me." The sea erupted with the underwater attack. Clouds of dark red appeared from below. That was all I saw of Trevor. The thrashing continued briefly, and soon the sea was calm. I waited an hour before launching my small inflatable boat. I was nervous even doing this, considering how many sharks I had seen. I headed toward the shore, admiring the beautiful sunset that began this story. I reflected for a moment, then shook myself alert and focused on moving forward. The hardest part was done, but there was more to complete. So far, the plan was working perfectly. Behind the boat, I disconnected the small electric motor and threw it overboard. It sank immediately. Then I took out my knife and punctured the inflatable raft. Because of the tides, you never know where pieces of this raft might wash up. I swam to shore. The sky was turning dark blue. I came across a field of limestone coral formations. I hid my gear behind the coral field, away from places where it might be found. The secluded beach area was perfect for my purposes. I found my hidden supplies and changed into my running gear. Putting on my backpack, I walked carefully over the uneven terrain toward the lights of the highway. It was an 11-mile run in the dark to the Meridian. The first half, I was fueled by adrenaline from the day's events. The last half was challenging. It had been a long day, and I was running out of energy. By the time I reached home, it was almost 9 o'clock that evening. I just sat in my apartment and thought. Mentally, I analyzed the previous day's events. I didn't think I'd been spotted on Trevor's boat. I was wearing an unusual shirt and hat and kept my head down as we left the marina. I wiped down everything on the boat that I remembered touching. I finally decided no one had seen me run onto the highway in the dark. The events of that day flashed through my mind. Despite the terrible attack and Trevor's death, I felt no remorse. I know I can never tell anyone about that day. Friday dawned a new day, and at 5 o'clock in the morning, I was back at work. Another normal day. The markets were behaving as Kevin's forecasts had predicted. I was slowly positioning myself for the approaching hurricane season. By mid-afternoon, I was surprised that I hadn't heard anything about Trevor or Kate. By the evening news, there was a report of a missing person and an abandoned boat found anchored off the coast near the airport. Friday night, Kate knocked on the apartment door. All day, I'd been thinking about how to handle this moment. I knew this would happen. "Kate," I said in surprise, "what do you want?" My role was the abandoned husband. It actually wasn't difficult to play. She hugged me with tears in her eyes. "Marcus, Trevor is missing. They found his boat at sea, but he wasn't on board." I didn't respond to the embrace. My arms lay limply at my sides. I pulled away from her and asked what was wrong. "Marcus, it's all over the news," she said. "They found his boat, but there's no sign of Trevor." Now she was sobbing. I looked at her as if trying to comprehend the situation. I paused, then said, "I'm sure he'll turn up. Probably nothing to worry about." She looked at me with a glimmer of hope, thinking maybe I was right. I walked over to her, and she seemed to think I was going to put my arm around her. I put my hand on her back and gently led her to the door. "I thought you said you were moving out for a week. You have a few more days?" I said without any emotion. She looked at me with a confused expression. "Marcus, you're kicking me out of my own home? I need you now more than ever," she said desperately. "Looks like you didn't need me while you were having your learning experiences with Trevor at his apartment," I said. "Get out," I yelled. "If I hear that self-actualization nonsense one more time, I'm going to lose it." As she walked away, she was sobbing. Sunday morning, Sam and I had coffee again. I made sure we only appeared as friends. No hugging, no kissing, no holding hands. Nothing romantic. We got along wonderfully. We talked about Trevor a little, but not much. First of all, I didn't want to seem too interested in him. That might seem suspicious. Second, I really didn't want to discuss him anymore. Back at the condo, I turned on the news. The first thing I heard was a gruesome discovery on a popular beach outside of Miami. A severed arm, possibly from a shark attack, washed ashore. Here we go. On Monday, Kate tried to call me, but I didn't answer. Then I got another call. It was the police. They said they were investigating the death of Trevor Blackwell. They stopped by my apartment, and we discussed the Thursday when Trevor left the marina. The detective mentioned they thought I might have gone diving with Trevor. I denied it. I told them about my inner ear problems and gave them the name of my doctor to verify if they wanted to. That was the last I heard from them. I changed the locks on the condo, but Kate kept trying to get back in. I heard sobbing voicemails and knocking on the condo door day and night on Friday. I called Gerald Chun and told him I wanted to proceed with the divorce. I also wanted a restraining order citing abandonment and adultery. He asked when I wanted to serve her, and I told him Friday night at the Meridian on Ocean Drive at 7 p.m. community social would be happening that night. It was a subdued event, held in the shadow of Trevor's gruesome death. He wasn't beloved in the Meridian community, but he was one of us. The investigation lasted several days, but due to lack of evidence, it was officially declared a shark attack. Both Sam and I were attending the event. I sat safely at a small table with the Rodriguez family and Robert and David. A few times, Kate approached me, but my friends formed a protective barrier around me. Sam and I exchanged smiles and glances a few times, but she knew to keep her distance for now. Among the colorful tropical shirts, shorts, sundresses, and swimwear, a short, well-dressed Asian man in a suit and tie entered the gathering. The group fell silent for a moment, then resumed their usual conversations. He walked up to Kate and called her name. I saw her nod, and he held out a legal-sized envelope to her. "You have been served," he said with a slight, polite bow. He turned and walked away. There was silence at the community social, and then Kate broke down sobbing. Even I felt somewhat uncomfortable. I got up and walked away into the darker areas of the grounds before she noticed me. In the distance, I heard her crying as she called my name. I was already thinking about getting a room at the Seta Miami Beach for the night, just to avoid her, when suddenly a small hand grabbed my arm. It was Sam. "Hi," she said. "Want some company?" I told her yes, but I wasn't in the mood to talk. We went to her place. We talked for a while, and I asked if I could stay to avoid a confrontation tonight. She agreed. "Just don't misunderstand," she said. I knew I had successfully avoided Kate all weekend and returned to Unit 812 on Sunday evening. On Monday, Sam and I had coffee and had a long, honest, and wonderful conversation. We still hadn't discussed the future, but I think we both sensed we had a future together. Finally, I talked to Kate over the phone. She begged and pleaded and cried. I told her it was over. When she finally realized it, she became furious. She got herself a lawyer and the battle began. Chun had a team of investigators who interviewed many people who witnessed Trevor manipulating Kate. One resident saw them together intimately on Trevor's deck on the Friday morning before his death. I had a visit from Robert, who informed me that Victoria, Trevor's widow, would be arriving on Saturday from New York, apparently to settle some of Trevor's affairs and reclaim her property. That I thought about this news. But Kate is staying there? Yes, dear friend. I know she doesn't know about Miss Sterling's arrival. I thought you should know so you can prepare accordingly. All week, I received calls from Kate alternating between anger over the divorce and pleas to reconcile and work things out. My love for her was gone. I just wanted it to be over. On Saturday morning, I met with Sam to help me develop a plan to end this relationship drama. At first, she didn't want to agree to certain details, but then she consented. She understood what Trevor had put her through, and in a way, this felt like closure. I wasn't around when Victoria arrived at her and Trevor's apartment, now occupied by my soon-to-be ex-wife Kate. But from several accounts, here's what happened. Victoria arrived at the apartment and quickly realized someone was living there. Obviously not Trevor. At that moment, Kate was taking a bubble bath. Victoria walked in and shocked Kate out of her relaxation. Victoria demanded to know what Kate was doing in her apartment. She didn't know or care about Trevor's latest conquest or who he was involved with. Why are you here? Victoria yelled at Kate. Kate stood up and covered herself with a towel, soap bubbles sliding down her body. Oh, Victoria, Kate exclaimed. Isn't it terrible about Trevor? With sadness and pleading in her eyes. No, Victoria said. It's not terrible at all. In fact, those sharks saved me millions. I was just about to divorce that predator. Kate looked at Victoria with a blank stare. How could she say that about her brilliant mentor? Now get out of my apartment before I call the police and have you arrested for trespassing, Victoria said to her. Victoria stopped her as she dejectedly headed to the bedroom to get dressed. Out, she shouted. But my clothes, Kate wailed. Out, Victoria commanded. And give me back my towel. Now Kate was naked in the hallway. Robert and David rescued her and provided clothes before she attracted even more attention. Apparently, one of the residents took photos that would later circulate as gossip. An hour later, she showed up at my door. Marcus, she said, I know lawyers fight, but you're my husband. Can't we at least talk? I let her into the apartment. She sat on the couch and I sat in the chair. I miss you, and I still don't understand why you're so angry with me, she said. Kate, you were involved with Trevor. You gave him your body, and worst of all, you acted like it didn't matter. I told her, Marcus, why are you so focused on the physical aspect of my healing and self-realization? I was doing this for us, she told me. Are you saying that being intimate with Trevor was somehow supposed to be good for our relationship? Marcus, forget about the physical part with Trevor. You and I are meant to be together. I'm committed to you. Trevor helped me realize that you are truly my life partner. From now on, every moment of every day, it's my job to make you happy. What more could you want? She spoke with sincere conviction, looking me straight in the eye. Just then, Sam came out of the bedroom wearing only my robe. Kate looked at her with a shocked expression. Oops, Sam said, making no move to cover herself properly. A small smile played on her face. You, Kate shouted. What are you doing here? Well, you know how outdated morals can limit people, Sam said with a straight face, echoing Trevor's words back at her. Besides, Marcus has been helping me expand my horizons. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. She walked back into the bedroom. Marcus, she called from the bedroom. Could you come back and continue working on my self-actualization? She looked at Kate intently, raising her eyebrows. I'm sorry, Kate, I said. I need to go back and work on becoming the best version of myself. Kate ran out of the apartment sobbing. Everyone needs to understand one thing. By far, the most intimate thing I'd had with Sam at that point was a couple of light kisses. She reluctantly agreed to help with this performance as a way to get closure on what Trevor had done to her. She only had to emerge from the bedroom in my robe. She improvised the rest brilliantly, and I wasn't complaining. When I walked into the bedroom, she was already dressed. She saw the mixed expression on my face and laughed. "You look like someone who just got exactly what they deserved," she said with a beautiful but somewhat sad smile. I hope that helped both of us. The divorce proceedings moved faster than I expected. Kate had moved back to Chicago by October, staying with friends while she looked for an apartment and a new teaching position. In the divorce settlement, we split the joint bank accounts. I never disclosed my secret consulting account. I bought out her share of the condominium. I wasn't leaving Miami. 5 months later, hurricane season came and went exactly as Kevin had predicted. My weather-related claims business exploded, and by December, my consulting account had grown to well over $800,000. I was set for early retirement if I wanted it. Sam and I had been taking things slowly, but by Christmas, she was practically living with me. Our relationship grew out of shared trauma, but it became something genuine and healthy. We both understood loss, manipulation, and the importance of honesty. We both understood that trust had to be rebuilt carefully. I never discussed Trevor, shark attacks, or even scuba diving. Not even with Jake when he returned from Australia in November. He and I have become good friends. Every once in a while, I catch him looking at me with a knowing expression. I get the feeling he suspects what happened, but we never discuss it. There's an unspoken understanding between us. Kate tried to contact me a few times during the holidays. I never responded. According to mutual friends, she found a teaching position in the Chicago suburbs and was seeing a therapist to work through what she called her trauma from Trevor's death and our divorce. She apparently told people that I had abandoned her in her time of need. I felt no guilt about this narrative. On New Year's Eve, Sam and I sat on our balcony watching fireworks over Biscayne Bay. The air was warm, the drinks were cold, and life felt perfect. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if Jake hadn't told you about Trevor?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. I think Trevor would have eventually destroyed us anyway. Predators like him always do. They can't help themselves. "I used to think about getting revenge on him," she said quietly. "I used to fantasize about him getting what he deserved. When I heard about the shark attack, I felt relieved." "That's understandable," I said. "Sometimes I feel guilty for feeling relieved." "Don't," I said. "Some people make the world a better place by leaving it." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the lights reflect off the water. In the distance, a boat was heading back to shore, its navigation lights blinking steadily. "I love you, Marcus," Sam said suddenly. It was the first time either of us had said it. "I love you too," I replied, and meant it. As midnight approached and the fireworks intensified, I thought about the past year. I had lost a marriage, committed murder, rebuilt my life, and found love again. In any objective sense, I should feel guilty, conflicted, or traumatized. But I didn't. Trevor Blackwell was a predator who destroyed lives for his own gratification. He had ruined Sam's marriage, was in the process of destroying mine, and had undoubtedly damaged countless other women over the years. Victoria had confirmed as much when she said the sharks had saved her millions in divorce costs. The world was a better place without him. I thought about Kate, probably sitting alone in some Chicago apartment, still convinced she was the victim in all this. Part of me felt sorry for her, but mostly I felt nothing. She had made her choice when she chose to believe Trevor's manipulation over her husband's concerns. She had chosen to leave our home to live with a man who was seducing her while I was out of town. Some choices have consequences. Sam leaned against me as the clock struck midnight, and we kissed while fireworks exploded overhead. Her kiss tasted like champagne and new beginnings. Life in paradise is beautiful, But paradise, I had learned, sometimes requires a sacrifice. Thank you for your viewing. See you next time. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.